Hey friends, thank you for tuning into my channel, Rosa Rise. It's your girl Rosa, and today we're going to be talking about 7 tips on how to deal with a negative emotion. Now in this video I'll be talking about tips that help me cope with my negative emotions. These are in no way, shape or form a replacement to any treatment that you are doing, whether that be for professional help or prescribed medication. So if you are on medication or are seeing a therapist or are considering seeing a therapist, please continue to do so. These are just tips that personally helped me, and I know I've been in that position, so continue doing what feels right to you. Now this video was inspired by my previous video on 4 keys on how to be happy. In that video I talked about what to do with a negative emotion, and technically what I said was kind of ride it out, ride the wave. So here I'm going to be going in depth with 7 ways to deal with a negative emotion. Now when you're in a negative emotion, you're probably not going to be in the right state of mind to remember 7 steps or 7 tips. That's why I called it tips rather than steps, because you don't have to follow these tips chronologically, because you're going to be scrambled. Whether you're mad, angry, anxious, sad, you're not going to be in the right state of mind to follow set tips. So just know when you listen to this that you can pick a few. You don't have to do all 7, and maybe you'll just do like number 5 and then number 1 or number 3. It doesn't matter what order. These tips will help you, as well as that they happen at different speeds. So sometimes all 7 sometimes just happen in 5 seconds, and sometimes it happens in a day or in a week. So time is also not really relevant and how you do these steps or the order of it. So these are 7 steps. Pick and choose what you like. When you're in that mindset, you're probably just going to remember a few, but that's okay, and it's going to happen in weird times. You're going to notice that you probably already do these steps on your own without really thinking, oh, this is a step, this is a coping mechanism to how to get out of this negative emotion. So yes, we're going to talk about accepting the negative emotion, but also how to try to get out of it without fighting it, because again, it is a survival mechanism. Number 1 is to be present and accept the negative emotion. So in my first video I talked about you really can't do anything. You just kind of have to accept it, because if you fight that negative emotion, you're actually going to make it worse. And this is why. A negative emotion is actually part of your defense mechanism, and it's part of our DNA. It's part of our body telling us that something's up. So it's our natural survival mechanism. These negative emotions, for example, anxiety or fear. If a car is speeding past the red light, we have this emotion, this instinct, and we hit the brake. That's a defense mechanism. So we can't really eliminate negative emotions because it's necessary. It's our way that our body communicates to us, and this is why we have to accept it. And fighting it is just gonna make it worse. So tip number 1 is to accept and be present. Where you are right now in this situation and this obstacle, whether it be good or bad, is exactly where you need to be right now. Whether if you're a spiritual person or not, life is a journey. Our purpose of life is just to experience it, and what you're experiencing now is what you need to experience. And we don't know what's going to be in the future. We don't know why we're experiencing, and until something comes up in the future like, oh, I know how to deal with that, or I've been through that, I can help somebody else. So trust in the process of life. Have faith in yourself that you can handle the situation, and be present. You are in this situation for a reason. You may not know the reason, but you are. Where you are is where you need to be. So tip number 1 is to accept the negative emotion, because it is part of your survival mechanism, and it's trying to tell you something. Your body is communicating with you, and trust in the present, that where you are right now is where you need to be. So number 2 is change the perspective. Right now, depending on the negative emotion, again, we're being very generic. We're trying to incorporate every negative emotion in this video. So I'm trying to be very generic, but change the perspective. And you can do this in many ways. One, if you are in this negative state of mind because of somebody else, or if there's a second or third party involved, try to see the situation in their shoes or in their perspective. Like, how do they feel versus how you feel? They might feel the same as you, or you both may be victims. So that kind of helps you see it in a different light, see the situation in a different light. Also, if it's not regarding another person, try to change the perspective of how to see it in a different way that's beneficial to you. I'm going to put the quote here from Albert Einstein because I can't remember it verbatim and I should have. But basically this quote says that it is crazy or it is madness to try to solve a problem with the same mindset. So I'm going to put the quote here. But basically this goes back to your negative emotion. You're trying to get out of it, right? Without fighting it, but you're trying to change the perspective and see how can I solve this in a different light, because right now the way that I'm looking at it or the way that I'm approaching it is not working out for me. That again, it depends on the situation. So and in a different way to change your perspective is to put yourself in the therapist's shoes. So pretend that you are your own therapist, and what I love about this technique is that there's no judgment. Therapists, typically the reason why they get paid and the reason why people go to them is because we can talk to them without any judgment, without any fear that we'll be put to blame, knowing that they'll always be on our side. So talk to yourself, or even mentally go through the situation as if you're telling yourself, as if you're the therapist. That kind of removes you from the situation, removes you from feeling negative, and you're pretending that you're the therapist and you're getting rid of all that judgment. Because sometimes a negative emotion may be guilt, shame, embarrassment. So without removing yourself from the situation and pretending to be the therapist will actually kind of eliminate that judgment feeling of feeling ashamed for feeling this way. So again, you can change the perspective by looking at it from another person's point of view. If the situation involves another person, you can look at it in a critical point of view of how to solve this in a different way than how you approached it before. Remember Albert Einstein's quote. And the third way is pretend you are your own therapist and remove the judgment from the situation. Tip number 3, be mindful and aware. So this, if anything you can remember from the 7, I feel number 3 is very important, because this is where you start asking yourself questions to help you prevent this from happening again and to remove yourself from identifying with that negative emotion. So let's talk about how to be mindful and how to be aware. Now, this is where typically a spiritual person or someone who knows how to meditate would meditate. Step number 3 for them would be meditation. However, you can do step number 3 without meditating. I know when I say that word, a lot of people run away, or trust me, when you're in a negative state of mind or when you're feeling negative and you're not really experienced with meditation, it's not going to help you. I'm just being honest. If you definitely practice meditating, definitely meditate if you are trying to. I know I'm not a regular meditator, but when I do meditate in situations, because I know it'll help me. However, if you're not a meditator and you're going through this negative situation, maybe meditation is not the right step or not the right approach. You can try, I'm not saying you won't, but it's not going to be easy. And I want you to have the benefit of being mindful. So tip number 3. So this is how you do it without meditating. So you're going to ask yourself a few questions. And the first question is obviously, what am I feeling? You're going to first think of the first emotion that you're feeling, whether it be angry, sad, anxious, whatever it may have you. You're gonna identify the first one, but you're gonna ask yourself again, what else am I feeling? Now, this is where you really dig deep and you realize that maybe there's something else tied in with this anger. So I'm angry with this person, but you may also realize, oh, because I feel guilty because this happened, because I yelled at them or something. That's just one example, but you'll realize that one negative emotion, or even emotion in general, are tied to many other, and you kind of have to pull that rib, you know, the clown and the ribbon, or the magician and the ribbon. You kind of have to pull it out. Ask yourself these questions. Realize, what else am I feeling? What deep down is really bothering me? Yeah, the situation is bothering, but why is it bothering me? So this is what you want to do. And this is technically what meditation is when you're meditating or doing mindfulness meditation, you're looking at your thoughts. thoughts. You're not actually in the thought, you're observing your thoughts. So this is the same concept. You're observing your emotions, not just one emotions, but the many that you have. So once you ask yourself, what else am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Ask yourself, what is the trigger? What was the cue that made me feel this way? Believe it or not, and you may realize this already, but emotions can be habitual. You may feel a certain emotion every day, all the time, or constantly more than others, and it may be a negative one. So if that is the case, then you really asking yourself what is the trigger is a good question to ask. That way you realize what the situation is that is really bothering you. You can try to fix it, you can try to avoid the trigger, or if the trigger is just an everyday occurrence, you can just be mentally prepared and emotionally prepared that this is what's going to happen, and you'll build resilience. And then another question or technique that you can ask, but maybe you don't have to, is where in my body or where in your body do you feel this emotion? And this is a meditation technique, of a mindfulness technique, is where in the body. Whether you be a spiritual person and you believe in chakras, energy, feng shui, qigong, many many ways of talking about energy in the body. Most familiar is with chakra, but where in the body do you feel it? And it helps me to just put my hand or put energy towards it. If you're not a spiritual person and this too woo-woo for you, get used to it, because I'm just kidding. If you're not a spiritual person, it's totally fine. But the reason why you want to ask yourself where in the body do you feel it, you can give yourself comfort, of course. You know, when you get a wound, you rub it, or when you hit yourself, you rub it. Same kind of concept. Like, sometimes rubbing it helps, and also it removes the situation from being all of you to just a specific spot. So what happens is you stop identifying with this negative emotion, because it's like, I feel it. Usually I always go here, because my anxiety and a lot of my negative emotions, I feel it in my chest, but for some people can be the head. But you remove the negative emotion from your whole being, from identifying with that negative emotion. And you really shouldn't identify it with your negative emotions, because then you start subconsciously telling your mind that this is who you are and that you're always going to feel this way. So ask yourself, where do I feel it? And remind yourself that this is not who you are. You do not identify with anxiety, with depression, with sadness, with anger. You are you. And where you feel it, that's where you feel it. That's where that tension is. It is not your whole self. So tip number 3 is to be mindful. You can do meditation if it is your thing. If it's not your thing, just ask yourself the questions. What am I feeling? What else am I feeling? What are the triggers? And where in the body do I feel it? Tip number 4, ask for help. Yeah, you can ask for help in the situation. You don't have to, again, like I said in the beginning, you don't have to do every single step. I highly recommend step number 1, maybe 2 and 3, or 1 and 3. But asking for help, I realize when I'm very frustrated or very angry, sad, whatever emotion I feel, I automatically feel better when I tell somebody about it, when I vent to somebody. And that's where therapy comes into play. If you want to seek professional help, go for it. If you need medication, do it. Ask for help. Have a friend or have your loved one, a partner help you, or be there and just talk it out. Now, I want to talk about this real quick. When you ask for help, be prepared to feel defensive. Now, depending on the situation, sometimes I vent and it just feels better for the person to just listen and they don't say anything. Sometimes, and the majority of the times, if you're asking your friend for advice or somebody for advice, you're not going to like to hear that advice. Like I said before, when you are in a negative state of mind or when you're feeling a negative emotion, trying to fight it feels bad. So when someone's giving you advice, you're automatically going to feel defensive. So when you're asking for help and you're expecting advice, or if somebody, just be prepared to get advice. If you don't want to hear advice, tell the person, I just need you to listen. But be prepared to not be ready to hear that advice. You're gonna be defensive, and don't fight back when you hear the advice. Just like, it's up, you don't have to listen to the advice if you don't want to, but just remind yourself in the conversation who is the listener. When you went up to your friend or loved one or your help, and you were talking and they were the listener, now the situation can be reversed. They may be talking, so now you are the listener. So get ready to feel defensive, because in that negative state of mind, you don't want to hear what the right thing is to do or what someone else's opinion is. So if you don't want to hear other people's opinions, just say, oh, I just need a vent. If you are ready to hear for someone's opinions, or just be ready for it. Be ready to feel defensive. One of the things that kind of annoy me when some people ask for my help, and I'm not saying I don't want other people to ask for my help, is when I give advice and then people just kind of ignore that advice completely and just constantly like put themselves in a certain situation, and then they just go to the person to talk about it and don't do anything, and then they come back and talk about it and come back. So that's very a negative situation. I'm going on a rant right now, but that's not really good for you or the other person. You're venting, if you're into energy work, when you're venting, it's healing energy. So don't be worried, or don't go in with the attention that, oh, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to give them my negative energy. No, it's a healing process. So if it's good for you and it's good for them because they make you feel important, or they make them feel important. However, if you're constantly going to the person for the same situation, and you're not listening to their advice, that's kind of negative, and you really shouldn't be doing that. But I'm going on a rant. So tip number 4, ask for help, whether that be professional help or venting to a friend. Just be ready to feel defensive, but don't worry, it's normal. Just listen to whatever advice. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but just asking for help and letting that negative emotion out of your system can help you feel better. Tip number 5, take progressive action. Keyword, progressive action. So if you are angry with somebody, or if you are sad, don't go up to the person and start a fight, or do anything in a manner that's just not healthy for you. I'm all for, doing some drinking, or a little bit to release the pain, but it comes into a point where if you're too reliant on substances or self-harm or doing violence, something that's not progressive, it's just not good for you. What I mean by progressive action is depending on the situation, and for me with anxiety, I had anxiety about the unknown, so doing things to help me to know that I did something about it kind of helps the situation. Now there's 2 types of progressive actions that you can do. You can do an action towards the situation that's bothering you and causing this negative emotion, or you can do a progressive action that gets your mind away from the situation. An example of progressive action towards the situation can be creating an action plan, like actually doing something about whatever the situation may be, whether that is creating goals and taking action towards whatever that's bothering you, or if another person is involved, communicating with that person. If you are fighting with somebody, whether that be a partner, a friend, or a coworker, sometimes talking it out and communicating in a progressive way. Again, we're not fighting, we're being constructive here, how you feel, and then allow them to tell you how you feel. Again, communicating who's the listener, I'm the listener or they are. Take turns, and that would sometimes eliminate the negative situation. You realize, oh my god, I feel a lot better, or it'll just kind of put a band-aid on it, but at least you took action towards the situation. Now, progressive action to keep your mind away from the situation is to actually do something that you like. So do another trigger. So we talked about emotions having triggers, or negative emotions. There was a trigger. You can also change that emotion by triggering to feel something else, whether that be a hobby that you like to do, like music, create, video games, to get your mind away from the situation, and you create a new change, a trigger to feel something else. A lot of Some therapists or professionals actually say that you shouldn't avoid the situation that's making you feel upset, or you shouldn't numb the pain, whether it is through substances. And I kind of sort of disagree. I'm not saying I'm better than the professionals, but I'm just saying if avoiding the situation makes it feel better, or if, you know, having a nice drink or, you know, a puff or two, or playing video games makes you feel better because it numbs the pain, then yeah, it makes you feel better. Why wouldn't I want to feel better? It's just to be conscious that you're not becoming addicted to anything, you're not creating bad habits. But if you do it once or twice, it's fine. The point of this creating progressive actions away from the situation is that you no longer feel this way, and that's the whole point. So I'm not encouraging anybody to to become alcoholics or drug addicts or just numb the pain completely or run away from the troubles. That is not what I'm encouraging. What I'm encouraging is to do what you can to create another trigger. Do what you enjoy to do. And of course, do it being mindful that it is progressive. That's the key word. Tip number 6, we're almost to the end, is sleep on it. So I find whenever I am upset, or if I'm in a living situation and I am upset with my partner, it's kind of awkward, but after we like sleep on it, like the next time when we wake up, we feel a lot better. And that sometimes can be the case for you guys. If none of the steps above make you feel better or help you deal with this negative emotion, 9 out of 10 times the very next day you'll feel better, or it won't be as bad. So definitely sleep on it. That's a very simple one. The reason why sleep is very good for you and why I created a step is because you were in a stressful situation, or you just underwent stress. Whatever negative emotion, you underwent some stress, and that took a lot of energy out of you. So you need to restore that energy. You can restore that energy by doing the progressive action, but sometimes that takes even more energy. So you need to restore that energy, or even meditating, but restoring the energy through sleep, through taking a nap. You really feel a lot better and a lot more refreshed to deal with your day and kind of get your mind out of that negative situation. So tip number 7, it's not an easy one to do, but this tip is to kind of help you in the situation where your triggers are in your home, it's in your workplace, or in your environment, and you're going to experience it every day, and you're going to get triggered every day to feel this negative emotion. So you can do all the tips that we talk about, but it can be a little hopeless if you're telling yourself, what's the point? I'm going to feel this every single day. So tip number 7 is for those of you that have this trigger in your life every day that triggers you to feel this negative emotion. And it's not an easy one, and it's going to take time. But tip number 7 is to have the conviction to let go. It's not an easy one, trust me. Now, we had all this talk in my other video and in this video that you don't want to fight a negative emotion, that fighting it is just gonna make it feel worse. And letting go is not fighting it. Letting go does not mean pretend that you're not feeling this way. Again, we're still accepting that we are feeling this way, and we're still riding the wave. We're still like experiencing the present, that this is happening to us. So letting go does not mean you're pretending that all of this is not happening to you. What the conviction to let go is that you make the conscious decision. Is this gonna bother me, or am I not gonna let this bother me? If you are gonna let it bother me, or if you are gonna let it bother you, then yeah, go through the steps or go through whatever it is that you have to do to ride this wave to negative emotion. But if it's gonna bother you, accept the fact that you're gonna feel this negative emotion and it's gonna bother you, and feeling this negative emotion is not bad. Again, every experience is for the reason. And if you're not gonna let it bother you, and you make the conviction that I'm gonna let this go, this situation's not gonna bother me anymore, you kind of have to like let it go. Like, you have to build the resilience to just like, this is not gonna bother me. And this, I had to personally do this with, I'm not proud to say, with my jealousy. And I just had to give myself the conviction that no matter what happens with my partner or the situation that's going on with my home, I'm not gonna let this bother me. Yes, I'm gonna feel it. As soon as the trigger hits, I'm gonna feel this negative emotion, and I know that this is gonna happen. But I'm just like, I'm not gonna react to it. I'm not gonna respond to it. I'm just gonna be aware that I'm feeling it. And slowly, it's kind of disappears. It's like, oh, it's not a big thing anymore. But this conviction, it's called, I say conviction for a reason. It's hard, and you kind of have to dedicate it, and you say, I already made up my mind that I'm not gonna let it bother me, that I'm gonna let it go, period. We're thinking about something else. If you can't do that, then obviously you're in the say, I'm gonna feel this emotion and ride that wave, feel that emotion. Don't fight it. Do the steps, the tips. I know that was a long one, guys, but that was it. Those are the 7 steps or 7 tips on how to deal with a negative emotion. Number 1 is accept it and be present. Where you are right now is where you need to be. Don't fight that negative emotion, just ride the wave. Number 2 is change the perspective. Try to see it in a different way. If it involves other people, or if it's just how to solve the problem, try to solve it in a different perspective with no judgment. Number 3 is be mindful. Ask yourself, what are the triggers? What else am I feeling? And where do I feel it? Just to help you stop identifying with it. Number 4, ask for help. Sometimes talking about it or venting can make you feel a lot better. Number 5, take progressive action. Do what you can to solve the problem, or try to do something that you like and enjoy to do to get your mind off of it and stop feeling this negative emotion. Number 6, sleep on it. And number 7, have the conviction to let go. If this video resonated with you guys, or if you liked any of the tips, please give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe to the channel, Rosa Rise. And this video was part of my previous video on 4 keys on how to be happy. So if you haven't already checked that out, I'll put the link somewhere around here or towards the end. And that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope that resonated. Please comment down below if you have any other tips that you do when you are in a negative state of mind. We would all love for you to share. I want to hear more. But that's all that I have. Take care. Bye.